Hello and welcome to Your Hometown Solutions. I'm your host, Jean Newell with Waterview Realty. And here in the studios, every week we talk to experts that help you make decisions concerning your family, your home, your finances, your dog, your cat, your garage, your garden, just about anything that concerns you and you need an expert's advice. They're here in the studios with me every week. And today we're going to be talking about the law. And we like that. We want to know more about senior law because there are many concerns and questions that arise as we grow older and approach those sunset years. Where will I live? What will become of me if I'm too frail to take care of myself? Who's going to take care of me and help me make those decisions? How will I be able to pay for long-term care? How will those assets be distributed? In the last decade or so, there's a new category of law that has emerged specializing in helping people answer those questions and learn their rights. It's called elder care or elder law. And in the studios with me today, we have a master of laws.
Very important, very prestigious.
Attorney Alec Prentice, who is an elder law specialist. Welcome to the studios, Elder. I started to say Alec. I'm all right. Maybe I'm going to need some of this care.
Well, good evening, Jean. I think it's been a long day for both of us, but that's what we do. We work hard.
And it's only 1:00 in the afternoon, and I'm making these mistakes, but that's okay. Tell us a little bit about your practice. How did you get into elder law?
Well, basically, Jean, when I was in law school, I enjoyed the transactional courses. I enjoyed the tax courses. I certainly didn't want to sue people for a living. Criminal law didn't seem like the most kosher way to go. I grew up in Florida. There was always a larger elder population around me. I always got along with elderly people. I had a great relationship with both sets of my grandparents. And honestly, I figured I may never get rich, but I'd never go hungry, and I'd enjoy what I would do for a living.
Right.
So I kind of just fell into it that way.
Well, usually we have John Lack with Lack and Lack Chartered, who owns Waterview Realty and Waterview Title, on with me, and he had a little bit of a conflict today and couldn't make the show, but we would have discussed with you how real estate is evolving and how a lot of the people that we work with now are either selling their homes or needing advice on transitioning into other avenues and other lifestyles. And one of the topics, and we brought it up last week when we were talking to Michelle Taylor from the Fountains, that is an assisted living and a senior living specialist, that there's always those family situations discussing should they stay or should they go. Some people don't know whether they need to go into assisted living. Do they need to stay in their house? And they just need some people to bounce some ideas off of. And that's why they need to go to someone like you that they can look at the total picture and give them some good advice instead of them going to strictly a real estate agent that just might want to sell their house. Maybe that's not going to be the appropriate thing for you.
Yeah.
So, what kind of people do you see coming for your advice? What's their situations?
Well, it ranges, but when it comes to strictly elder law issues, I'm typically dealing with asset protection in regards to getting people qualified for public benefits. And in plain English, that just means they've worked their entire lives to build up a certain nest egg, and if one of the spouses gets sick, we certainly don't want the well spouse at home to go broke, spending $10,000 per month on a nursing home, or maybe, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 per month on an assisted living facility. So a discipline of law that elder law attorneys engage in is basically asset protection in regards to getting people qualified for Medicaid. It's loosely called Medicaid planning.
Medicaid planning.
Right.
So do you like to see people before they're kind of up against the wall of doing things? Do you feel like you would like to have them come out when they're a certain age, just to kind of get some ideas on what's coming up in the next couple years for them?
Well,
or how do you like to approach that?
To be honest, Jean, most of my clients come to see me in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they haven't had a real long-term care event yet. Mm-hmm. They're thinking more about their estate planning. In other words, they're wanting to get their wills and their trusts in place and their powers of attorney.
And you do that as well.
And we do all that. Yeah, elder law, encompasses estate planning as well. It's a very important aspect of elder law. And at that point in time, I'll go over, okay, in the future, God forbid, there may be a point in time where you have to go into assisted living or you may have to go into a nursing home. None of us want to talk about that.
Right.
But at this point in time, when you're still healthy, just know that there's elder law attorneys out there that specialize in a discipline of law that can protect your assets, that can protect your nest egg. We don't do here in Florida planning in advance. Basically, people's assets are invested as they deem fit. They have their own financial advisors, and hopefully their financial advisors are giving them good advice, and those assets are building interest. And we want to keep those assets building interest. If their house is moving up in value, we want to keep that house intact, and the house is going to move up in value. If we're getting someone qualified for Medicaid, then I'll let you chime in.
I want you to talk about that because that seems to be the big thing on how most people don't have that kind of money set aside because we're learning that, we're living longer and we're retiring earlier, sometimes forced retirement, sometimes by choice.
Right.
But a lot of people's portfolios disappeared 10 years ago when we had a little bit of a real estate and crunch here, economy crunch. And so what they thought they had in their portfolios aren't there anymore. So we're up to the wire here now, and people want to make some decisions, and they don't have the money. How do you approach that?
Well, in an ironic way, that actually helps someone get qualified for Medicaid. I mean, you get qualified for Medicaid in two distinct ways. Mm-hmm. Either you legitimately qualify. I mean, you're really poor. In other words, you've either lost your wealth due to some extraneous circumstance or you never had any money. I mean, Medicaid was actually put in place by the federal government to pay for the long-term care of poor older people. And us elder law attorneys, we don't think we're abusing the system. We're not getting millionaires qualified for Medicaid. Right. But perhaps someone that's worked all their lives and they have a house, that's worth, maybe 150 to 300 to 400 grand and maybe another 100 grand or so in savings. It could be even a little bit more than that or less. And basically, we know how to basically reposition those assets. So on paper, it looks like they actually beat the income test and the asset test of Medicaid. And we get Medicaid to basically pick up the long-term care tab if they're in a nursing home. If they're in a nursing home, Medicaid will actually pay for the entire bill. So let's say your average cost of a nursing home per month, and the average cost of a nursing home per month in Brevard is around 8 to 10 grand. And we get that person qualified for Medicaid. Well, the private pay bill will stop and Medicaid will kick that money in. Now we lose that person's income, but at least we've protected the assets. Okay. I mean, Medicaid's kind of like, look, or the Social Security code is like, look, you can move through the loopholes and perhaps protect the nest egg, but whatever income is coming in, that's pretty much going to go to the nursing home.
Okay, so if they're only on a fixed income of $1,500 a month, that's it.
That will go to the nursing home, and then Medicaid picks up the difference. It's kind of the two kind of come together to meet the nursing home bill at that point.
So in that particular, they don't leave anything left over for personal expenses or anything like that?
Well, we've moved the money typically to a well spouse at home, and then they don't look at that spouse's assets anymore if we've gotten what we call the sick spouse qualified. If it's a single person, we've repositioned those assets, and they're typically in the hands of the children at that point. So we've preserved the nest egg theoretically, to supplement the applicant's care, but their care is being completely covered at that point by a combination of Medicaid and Medicare. And they've really passed the nest egg on to this, like I said, the well spouse at home, or perhaps their children if they're single. As far as their income, they get to keep $105 and the rest of it goes to the nursing home. If they have any unreimbursed medical expenses, they're allowed to keep money every month to pay those as well.
Wow. Those are some of the things. So what would you advise people to do? Is it prudent to start looking into elder care insurance or just investment planning? Like you said, maybe some elder care planning. But one thing before we talk about that, it just hit me when you were talking about nursing home. Do you also step in as a elder law specialist when there's any kind of elder abuse at some of these nursing homes and so forth?
No, that's another discipline of law, and that basically amounts to what we would call some type of tortious interference, and that would be a matter of malpractice for a torts attorney.
Okay, so you would know where to refer them off.
I refer those cases out. We're basically doing asset protection.
Okay.
And then during the course of asset protection, of course, we kind of also have to act as the nursing home patient's advocate too, because we're basically maneuvering through a very dense and complex system, and there's a ton of people involved, and the facility's telling them one thing and their friends are telling them another. So we're doing the asset protection, but we're also that source of stability that they can always call during the course of the qualification period and say, what do I really believe? And hopefully the attorney knows the law and knows what to say. Or if they don't, they'll research and find out the answers.
I know a person, this is a little slightly off topic, but I'm not too sure if this even kind of qualifies for what we're talking about. But they were young. He was in his 50s and he had a stroke. So he ended up with dementia where they could not have him live by himself or with his wife. And they put him in, since he was so young, and they knew he was going to be at this assisted living facility, and I think it was really more of a nursing home,
right.
Assisted living. And the only way he could qualify for Medicaid, his wife, would have to sell everything that she had.
Was this in Florida?
This is in Florida.
Yeah.
So she had to divorce him so he could qualify for Medicaid. Have you heard of things like that?
You hear of these horror stories, and basically they were given bad advice. The facility doesn't really want a whole lot of Medicaid qualified people. They would rather have that private pay money.
Right.
So if someone goes into a nursing facility and they're private paying at the tune of $8 to $10,000 a month, the last thing a nursing facility is going to say, hey, you know what? You can really, save money if you go to attorney Alec Prentice, down the street, and he'll get you qualified for Medicaid. And then our monthly money goes from $8 to $10,000 to $5,000.
Right.
So yeah. And what they'll do is oftentimes the facilities will tell people they have to sell their house, which you don't. In Florida, your house is what we call an exempt asset. So in other words, to keep it simple, if you're a single person and you want to get qualified for Medicaid, you can only have $2,000 in total countable assets. And to keep that simple, let's just think of a checking account with $2,000 in it. So you could have a checking account with $2,000 in it, and you can have a house worth up to $560,000. It's your homestead residence, and you qualify for Medicaid. The nursing home, what they will sometimes do, and I'm not saying that they all do this, they'll say, go ahead and sell that sucker, sell that house. Then once that house is sold and we have liquidity, it's no longer exempt.
Right.
So now we have $562,000 that we have to deal with. And of course, the facility wants to spend that down, at the tune of $8 to $10,000 per month, on average. If they know about elder law attorneys, we can even take that liquidity at that point and reposition it. It's much easier if you leave the house intact, obviously, because it's just exempt as is. Even if you're in the nursing home, it's still considered an exempt asset because it's your homestead. In Florida, and federal law looks at it as, even though you're not living there, you always have the intent to return, no matter how far along you are in regards to dementia.
You've been listening to the advice from a master of laws. I love that title, Estate Planning and Elder Law Care. Advice, Alec K. Prentice, attorney at law at 7630 North Wickham Road in Melbourne. And you have a website. Let's go ahead and give that out because people might want to just go on there and peruse that information.
You can peruse my website. It's very easy. It's just PrenticeLaw.com.
Spell Prentice.
Prentice, P as in Paul, R-E-N, T as in Tom, I-C-E, law.com.
Good, and you spelled correctly. You spelled it correctly.
Well, hopefully
good.
After 8 years of
be surprised at the people that spell their names wrong on the show. That's wonderful. So how would one find an elder law specialist? Of course, you're getting advice from Alec, but is there certain criteria that you would advise people? Maybe they're listening in another area, another state.